We're out testing the brand new 2021 Isuzu D-MAX up against the older model D-MAX. Now this is a test unlike you've ever seen before.
Close. Now, happy to say that the ruts are actually bigger than last time we tested it.
You see, here at 4-Wheel Drive 24/7, we test new vehicles like nobody else on the planet. You see, we're 4-wheel drive enthusiasts. We know what sort of conditions you're going to be putting these vehicles through, how you're going to modify them, and of course, how they need to stack up against the tough Aussie conditions.
Like a mountain goat. Holy heck.
So unlike a lot of other motoring journos who are only concerned about how comfortable the seat is, they've probably never taken their own 4-wheel drive to places like Cape York. They've never been stuck in a bog hole down in Tasmania. They probably haven't crossed the Simpson Desert a handful of times. You see, we have it 4-wheel drive 24/7, and all that experience is going to go into testing these vehicles. But if that's not good enough, and we don't think it is, we're actually going to ask the experts to give their evaluation of these vehicles, because we understand you guys will want to modify them. You want to know how capable that engine is by somebody who understands diesel engines. You want to know about suspension. So guess what? We're going to speak to suspension experts. And on top of that, we're going to be testing these vehicles in all the tough terrains that you want to see them tested in. I'm talking about big ruts, rock steps, steep terrain, mud holes, you name it, we're going to test it. So buckle in and find out exactly how tough the new Isuzu is. This is the all-new 2021 Isuzu D-MAX. This isn't just a facelift. Isuzu reckon it's a whole new 4-wheel drive from the ground up. The major upgrades are a factory rear diff lock, a completely new and improved interior, some important engine upgrades so it's quieter and more powerful, new suspension, the introduction of the IDAS system, plus a whole range of smaller changes which we'll get into. We're getting straight into the tough stuff. We're actually taking these utes down the exact same 4-wheel drive challenge as we did in Ute of the Year in January. It's a mix of ruts, mud, rock steps and a really shaly hill climb to finish it off. Let's see how they go. First up, we've got a rutted bit of downhill section which both 4-wheel drives do fairly easily. Coming back up, this will be another thing entirely. In terms of clearance, the new D-MAX has a slight increase, but as you can see, the departure angle still isn't fantastic. On our last Ute of the Year, most 4-wheel drives were really similar and all got little bumps here. The transmission is the same as the old D-MAX, so in terms of gearing, they're performing the same. But here's where we'll see the biggest difference. We've got some big rock steps up ahead, and this gives us a chance to test out that all-new locker.
Oh, so close. It's so hard without a locker, and you can tell straight away the traction control in the new Isuzu D-MAX is just so much better for this sort of stuff. It actually is calibrated for off-road conditions.
Now, the old D-MAX went up this hill with no locker, but it took a lot of convincing to get it up and a lot of right foot as well. Look how hard we have to push it to get up.
Actually, make things a little bit more interesting, I'm just going to drive straight up it. I'm not going to really put too much focus on picking a line. I'm going to try and drive the hardest bits of the rut because I do have the rear locker engaged, and it will show you just how much of a difference off-road that rear locker will make to this off-road capabilities of the D-MAX. There we go, straight up. It's like, I haven't even got over 2,000 RPM, I'm just pretty much crawling up. Look at that. No worries, no worries. This is a big rut though. This is going to test it out. Nice and slow. Nice and slow. Look at that wheel lift. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you got wheels in the air, it'll just keep getting traction. That's what you want.
A locker is without a doubt one of the mods that'll make the most difference to off-road performance. For this reason, the new D-MAX wins hands down for off-road ability over the old one. It's something we're desperate for Isuzu to add in their ute range, and we're so stoked that they have.
Now, as four-wheel drivers, we spend a lot of time on dirt roads. In fact, I've just got back from Cape York, and in that time I probably did about close to 2,000 kilometres on corrugated dirt roads. So you really get an appreciation if your vehicle handles dirt roads remarkably well. Now, a lot of that's got to do with suspension, and you can tell straight away that the suspension in the new Isuzu is just leaps and bounds ahead of the old model D-MAX. Now, that's fantastic because it's so much more comfortable to drive. I'm not holding back on these dirt roads. I'm giving it a real go. I don't even have the tyres let down, so I've got to say that this vehicle is really comfortable. Of course, it's a lot more refined than the old one. It's so much more quieter and comfortable inside, but more importantly, it's performance. It just drives so nice. You could do some big Ks on some very heavy corrugated roads like in Cape York and not have a drama in the world. You can tell there's a lot more suspension travel especially in the front end of the vehicle, which basically means when you hit a washout a little bit too hard, it's a lot more forgiving, and it doesn't hurt your spine as much like you find in some of the other dual cab utes out there. Now, the first thing you notice when you steer the old D-MAX down a corrugated dirt road with a stack of potholes is that it's a lot more bumpy, it's a lot more agricultural. It's certainly not the worst of the dual cabs on dirt roads. I've tested some that are absolutely woeful. This one here holds its own, but when you step into the brand new D-MAX, you realise that it's completely in a different class of its own. It handles the potholes and corrugation so much better, but I think the suspension has a lot better travel in it, which makes for the ride quality be a lot better. This one's not bad, but it's certainly not as good as a new D-MAX.
The new D-MAX definitely handles corrugations a lot better, so you've got a heap more control. Why? The secret is in the new suspension, but instead of hearing me explain the suspension, we took it to the experts at Fulcrum Suspension, who put it up on the hoist and gave their opinion on the changes to the standard suspension, and what it means when it comes to fitting aftermarket suspension.
I'm down here at Fulcrum Suspension with good mate Shane. Now, I thought who better to speak about the new Isuzu suspension than Shane. Now, mate, obviously they've changed nearly everything with this IFS setup. Can you run through some of the main changes that Isuzu have changed?
Yeah, definitely.
We'll find out why as well.
Definitely. Look, at first look, you can see there's obvious differences. Is the upper control arm's moved up. It's moved up quite a bit, you know.
Yeah.
They've extended the knuckle.
So the length of the knuckle.
The steering knuckle or stub axle. What they've also done is they've upgraded the front sway bar.
Yeah.
And they've also changed the pickup point of it.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
This will impact as a system on the way the vehicle handles completely.
Yeah. Well, I can notice that it obviously has less body roll when I'm driving the vehicle around.
Yep.
And also off-road, it seems to be way more capable as well. It seems like it has a bit more travel in that front end, maybe.
Look. It's actually got 30mm more droop at factory.
That's a huge amount more down travel. That's why it handles corrugations much easier. And also, in off-road situations, it'll mean you won't lift the wheel as easy, which means more traction. That's a huge plus.
Okay.
So once you add a lift into that factor, you're going to have more travel.
Yeah,
all round.
simple as that.
Yeah.
So how easy would it be to lift? I know that the old D-MAX had some limitations, would you just call it, I suppose, when you're lifting the vehicle.
Yep.
What do you think the prospects of the aftermarket lifts in this one?
I reckon you can definitely lift it higher. The problem that I can see, the first glance, is actually this droop stop up underneath this arm here.
Yep.
Okay. On full droop with a factory length shock in it, you've only got very small clearance. So when you do lift these vehicles, you are going to have to go to a reshaped upper
control. But a lot of IFS vehicles, you need to change the upper control arm.
Yeah, to get that wheel alignment right, and get that handling back. Because the way this rides right now, you don't really want to change the handling too much.
No, it works. It seems to work very, very well off-road. Also, the thicker sway bar, how that works. Is that going to limit the flex a lot, or how do you see that working?
The way because they've changed the pickup of it and they've changed the size of it, what that does, it will actually bring your sway bar in just that little bit early. But because of the pickup point, it's different. It's no longer on the lower control arm, and they've brought it to the knuckle. It's actually going to be a bit more gradual as it comes in, and IFS, it shouldn't restrict the front whatsoever because IFS sway bars are designed to go through the full range of movement anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So
you're going to get your best of both worlds. It's going to handle better on the black top, but also when you get it off-road, it's going to have a little bit more articulation, a little bit more droop, 30 mils already from standard over the other one.
Yep.
So it's going to be a bit more capable, a bit more comfortable off-road too.
Definitely.
No, I sort of felt that when I was driving. It was good to actually see exactly why that's happening. I also noticed it's got a one-piece aluminium tail shaft.
That is actually like the be-all, end-all.
Yeah.
You know, all the IFSs, trucks, and all the main cars nowadays have a two-piece.
That's right.
And when you lift the vehicles, they tend to induce a vibration, a driveline vibration, because the rear shaft comes down on a more aggressive angle, yeah?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, and you load up that rear uni.
Yeah.
Okay, with the one-piece shaft, when you lift the vehicle, the whole shaft changes angle.
So it's going to be better to lift this vehicle, obviously. You're going to probably get rid of those vibrations you might have seen in the older models and stuff.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, right. And the rear suspension, it seems like it rides very nicely, even without a load in the back of that tray.
Yep.
I noticed there was less leaves in this one.
So the rear leaf pack has a 2-leaf main and 1 secondary. The secondary is actually folded away from the main pack as well, so it's a bit like a frown, yeah?
Yeah.
So what happens there is as you load it up, you'll actually sit down more. So you'll come on a lot more gradual.
Yeah.
And it'll be a lot more comfortable. Say if you whack 100 kilos in it, this should be nice. It won't bottom out until you probably get more up to its GVM, but it should ride nice and smooth because it doesn't have that solid, just jarring
big old
load leaf.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Shane, thanks for that explanation, mate. That sort of cements in what I was feeling when I was driving the vehicle. Handles better on the road, and also it's way superior off-road.
Mate, it's definitely an upgrade on the previous model.
Now, one thing that's really brought the new Isuzu D-MAX into the 21st century is a lot of the safety technology. Now, the old D-MAX was quite agricultural, we know that, and we still loved it, but this one here is just a step above it. So it's got something called IDAS. That stands for Intelligent Driver Assistance System. Now, basically what that does is a bunch of cameras all around the vehicle, including on the windscreen here, that actually look out and monitor as you drive. So one of the things it's got is lane departure avoidance. So if you maybe get a bit drowsy and drift out of your lane or you're not paying attention, the vehicle actually self-corrects you and keep you in your lane. And it can also monitor different speed signs on the road. That's pretty crazy if you ask me, and it can adjust your speed. It'll show you on the dash what the speed limit is and will automatically adjust the speed. It's also got adaptive cruise control, so if you're sitting on, say, 110 in a 110 zone, there's a vehicle in front of you maybe doing 80 or something like that, it'll automatically brake the vehicle so you don't have to, so you can keep a safe distance behind it. But the good news is any of those safety systems you can turn off. So if you don't like those safety systems making little beeping noises or trying to correct the way you drive, you can turn all that assistance off, and I find that very helpful. At the end of the day, the driving experience should be up to you as the driver, and you shouldn't be dictated by the vehicle, but it's good to have those safety features in my opinion. Makes the vehicle a lot safer and can help you keep your license. 2 big ticks in my book. One of the things you really notice about the new Isuzu D-MAX is the comfort levels inside the cab. In fact, one of the areas where the old Isuzu lost a lot of marks in our year of the year test was in comfort levels. It was a very agricultural vehicle. The seats were super uncomfortable, and that really brought the score down. And I'm safe to say in this one, it's a whole nother beast. The seats, you know, leather accented seats, all the mod cons you'd want in an interior, but more importantly, it's very quiet in here. So, you know, overall, it just feels like a much more refined vehicle. It's the sort of vehicle you can jump in, do big kilometres, get out at the end of a big drive, like 1,000 Ks or something like that, and be quite fresh. You know, at the end of the day, I drive old Toyotas, and those vehicles are quite agricultural, they're quite noisy, so I'm kind of used to it. But I feel if you're forking out big money for a modern dual cab ute, you really want it to be quite comfortable. You're going to be expecting to do big miles in this seat, and at the end of the day, you want to do it in comfort. Now, the new model Isuzu D-MAX has the same 6-speed automatic transmission as the previous model. However, they've upgraded the oil cooler and also the pan on the transmission for better efficiency of cooling. But let's hear from our resident transmission guru, Rocket Rod.
Hi, it's Rocket here from Wholesale Automatics. First of all, congratulations on the new D-MAX. It certainly looks great. Now, did you know that the same 6-speed automatic transmission that's in the D-MAX is also in the MUX? Well, that's probably no big surprise. But what is a big surprise is that that same automatic transmission is also in the Prado 150 behind the 2.8. It's also in the Hilux. It's also in the Fortuner. Look, it's even in the Mitsubishi Triton. And the great thing about that is that because so many manufacturers are using that same transmission in their vehicles, is that it has been so well tested, it has been so well refined, so much so that we just don't see any problems here at Wholesale Automatics with them at all. Now, if they ever let me out of this state, I'll be able to get some beers, catch up with the boys, we'll be able to talk about this new D-MAX.
Now, without a doubt, one of the biggest selling features of the old Isuzu D-MAX was the engine, the legendary 4JJ1. Now, that engine we've tested ourselves for probably the last 5 years, done well over 200,000 Ks, taken it to places like Cape York a dozen times, down to Tasmania, just about every iconic four-wheel drive track known to man. Now, that engine has never let us down. It's been an absolute workhorse. And this one here is a new engine. Now, I say new in inverted commas. It's still a 3-litre Isuzu diesel, but it's not called the 4JJ1. It's called the 4JJ3 TCX. Now, the main difference between this one and the old one, of course, is it has a different turbo on it, which reduces a lot of that lag. And that's one of the first things you notice when you put your foot down. There's almost zero lag. It takes off, makes a stack of torque down low, which is exactly where you want it on a diesel engine. It's got a different intake system, a different injection system, and the result is a more refined and slightly more powerful turbocharged diesel engine. Now, I can't wait to put this through its paces, but we're not here to basically read the spec sheet of the engine, tell you how much horsepower, how much torque it's got. So instead, we thought we'd hook you up with the experts to tell you exactly what this engine's made of.
We took the old D-MAX and the new D-MAX to our mates down at Ultimate Diesel Tuning in Brisbane. They're the gurus when it comes to modern common rail engines. And they were able to give us an idea on how they make their power and how tunable the engines are.
The Isuzu 4JJ motor is reliability and performance all in one. And the next generation of the 4JJ3 is exactly the same with some subtle changes to the block, the turbocharger and the fuel system. The intake is now a forward-facing intake. The turbocharger has changed the rear wheel of the turbo, and what that means for you is it's got better response and less lag. So when you're towing your vehicle, you're also going to be maintaining the torque better through the delivery of this system, and that's what Isuzu is claiming about this new motor. So today what we've done is run both vehicles up on the dyno, including the new model and the old model, to see how this actually performs. And what we've seen with these changes, that this new model does perform better and does give better performance results. What this means for us from a tuning perspective is this platform is going to be great to get those extra gains in power and torque. So after running the new D-MAX up on the dyno, we've roughly seen 106 kilowatts of power. And this is exactly what we'd see with the revisions being added to the new 4JJ3 motor. Manufacturer's performance results always measure performance at the engine. Today what we've measured is the performance at the tyres for the new D-MAX. The results stack up exactly like I'd expect. We also see a bit of a flare with the transmission where the torque number is higher than what we'd expect, and that's due to being measured at the tyres.
Now, one of the first things we noticed after taking the wheel off is the new Isuzu has bigger brakes. So it's actually got an upgrade on the brake rotor to a 320mm rotor. So bigger the rotor means more surface area, more stopping power. Now, that's a good thing in our opinion, because as you guys will know, once we get a four-wheel drive, we like to modify it. We like to put a canopy on the back, maybe a bull bar, winch, a lot of extra weight. More weight usually compromises the stopping power of a vehicle. The bigger brakes is really going to help that, and that's a big tick in our books. Now is one of the most important parts of the test, in my opinion. It's testing the bush-proof ability, if that's even a word, of this vehicle. How reliable is this vehicle going to be in the Aussie bush? Because at the end of the day, we're not interested in how well this drives around car park shopping centres. We want to know how this is going to perform in some of the toughest conditions in the Aussie bush. Now, some of the off-road credentials that you can find on the spec sheet are pretty straightforward and also show that this vehicle is better suited to off-road than the older model. Now, the first one, of course, is the clearance of the vehicle. It's definitely a better clearance, which is going to make this vehicle capable off-road. There's no doubt about it. One of the other things they mentioned, of course, is got a higher wading depth. That is, it can go through deeper water than the older model. But the first thing you notice when you open the bonnet is the position of this air intake right here. Now, it's forward facing, so of course any water that comes up over your bonnet is going to go straight into that air intake. It does have a seal around here which is going to protect some of it, but of course you get yourself into a proper deep water crossing like up in Cape York or down the high country or something like that, the water is going to go straight into that airbox and it's going to be good night Irene for your engine. So factor in the cost of a snorkel when you're purchasing a D-MAX. One of the first things you need to do, in my opinion. There's a spot down in the guard that already looks like it's cut, ready for a snorkel to go in there. So the guys down at Isuzu have actually, you know, a bit of forward planning's gone into this vehicle. They know that you're probably going to fit a snorkel if you're serious about off-road work. And at the end of the day, there's not a really big negative or downside on this vehicle. You just got to understand that you need a snorkel if you plan on taking this thing properly off-road. Another thing, of course, this engine, everything's in the same sort of position as the Ford JJ1. The alternator's down, I think, quite low. We haven't had too much of a drama in the old D-MAX after a couple of 100,000 Ks and a stack of mud and water crossings, but it is worth noting that it is down low, which is a vulnerable position for an alternator. Of course, when you go through mud, it's one of the first things to get filled up, and that can go through the service life of that alternator quite fast. Other than that, everything's in the same position and it's quite accessible as well. So if you did need to pull out a roll of spanners, you'd be able to find your way around this engine bay quite quickly. Now, jumping underneath this vehicle, you can see straight away that there's nothing vulnerable that hangs down past the cross member or the chassis. So when you're off-road, this vehicle should be pretty safe from causing a lot of damage to the underbody. It's got underbody protection almost right up to the transfer case here. However, the front is made out of steel, and this one here that's protecting the auto sump is made out of plastic. So I'd probably suggest looking at an aftermarket option here that's a little bit more heavy duty. It's got an extra cross member in this chassis than the older model, and also you can just see by looking at this chassis as well, it's a stronger chassis. It's been inspired, no doubt, from Isuzu's truck heritage. Nice and strong. In fact, Isuzu have actually claimed that this chassis is remarkably stronger, up to 20% stronger than the older model. The other thing you're going to notice as well, that everything sort of is protected under here, which is what you want in a four-wheel drive. You don't want things hanging down that are going to get you stuck off-road or are going to be vulnerable to damage. Now, when it comes to talking about the body of the new D-MAX, a lot of new car journos, of course, are going to talk about the styling and the aggressive lines on the front. Now, I think that's quite subjective, and I'm going to let you make your own mind up when it comes to the styling of this vehicle. What I'm more interested in is the engineering behind this vehicle. What makes this thing tick off-road? Now, one thing I learned about this vehicle is the amount of extra engineering that's gone into the body, in particular the reinforcement in the roof. In fact, there's a 107% increase in the roof strength, which takes the total payload up to 100 kilos. That's fantastic if you're a trader, you want to carry a bunch of steel or timber on that roof, gives you the confidence to know that roof can handle it. If you're into camping and touring like myself, rooftop tents aren't getting any lighter, especially those hard-shelled ones, and it gives you confidence as well. You can kit this vehicle up for extreme touring. If we move to the back of the vehicle now, one thing we liked about the old D-MAX, which thank goodness has not changed, is the position of that rear axle over the tray. The good weight distribution means you can carry a lot of weight in the back of that tray, including a full-size canopy. So let's hear from Tim from Mitts Alloy, and he can explain it in even more detail.
G'day guys, Tim here from Mitts Alloy. Thought I'd run you through setting up the new D-MAX for a tray and canopy. The thing looks schmick. We've taken one for a test drive from the local dealer, and we've got the bodybuilder's guide, so we've gone through a few things. You'll be stoked to know you can fit a full 1800 tray and canopy package on it, so full size, that's awesome. A couple of things to consider when you're setting them up is make sure that the bodybuilder you choose is aware that they have a new lane assist system. This is pretty common in a lot of the new vehicles coming out. They've got to make considerations when installing that. But other than that, it's an unreal bit of kit, and we're really looking forward to seeing Graham's one on the tracks. Cheers.
Finally, we're talking value for money, something we're really big here at Full Drive 24/7. That doesn't mean the cheapest option is the best, it means you're not wasting any money on something that's too expensive or something cheap and nasty that won't last. Isuzu gave us their top spec X-Terrain models of the D-MAX, which we know most of you won't buy. So, we compared pricing of the LSU version. The 2021 came in at $50,900, while the 2021 version came in at $56,900. Keep in mind this is their RRPs. It'll be very rare you'd pay that much from a dealer, but a $6,000 price rise is definitely considerable. The big question is, do you get an extra $6,000 worth of value in the 2021 model? In my opinion, it's so bloody close. It's better off-road. If you're doing a lot of highway and city driving, the IDAS system might just stop you from an incident or two, and the overall comfort and quiet cab is something you'll appreciate over time.
Well, it's been great to get the new D-MAX really dirty and test it in a variety of different hard terrains right here in the Glasshouse Mountains. So at the end of the day, you're looking at a completely new D-MAX vehicle. This is head and shoulders above the old model D-MAX. It's so much more capable. It's got a standard rear locker. It's super comfortable, refined. The suspension is completely new. There are so many features in this vehicle that really makes it a proper brand new model, unlike a lot of facelifts you normally see in the dual cab ute market. How has it performed though? Well, it's performed absolutely sensational. All the flaws, I think, of the old model D-MAX, and there wasn't many to begin with, I think have been fixed and upgraded in this model D-MAX. Overall, it is a great ute. So the big question you're probably asking is, how would the new Isuzu D-MAX go against the other range of utes that are out there in the market? Now, if you cast your memory back to early January this year, and we did a massive ute of the year comparison, you'll know that the D-MAX came third. There was a couple of vehicles that pipped it out right near the end that just had an overall better package. So I only wish that this model D-MAX was available back then for testing, because I reckon it would have been a contender for top place honours. This is a serious four-wheel drive vehicle with all the right features in one package that's super reliable and ready to turnkey and drive around Australia tomorrow. So I can't wait to test this one against all the other range of utes, and that's a test you can look forward to soon.